And a very pleasant good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of JMU Sound Off. I am Jonathan McNamara, excited for a great discussion tonight. We've got three great guests. We've got Mike Uva, who's going to share his experience as a former player under head coach Bob Chesney at Assumption College. We also have Marc Bacote, who's a former James Madison wide receiver and the current tight ends coach at Air Force, to give us a little preview of what fans of JMU can expect to see from Air Force and what it's going to be like for him to coach against his former team. And then we have a man that needs no introduction, at least to any of us associated with JMU Sound Off, Mike Bacote, former football player at JMU and a man who has wore many hats in helping to advance this athletics department into the future. So really excited for that discussion. And as always, before we bring on our other hosts, we want to give a shout out to our sponsors at the Montpelier Collective. Big week for the Collective as well as Skyline Financial Partners. We'll talk about the Collective in a second, but as always, to learn more about Skyline Financial Partners, skylinefinancialpartners.com. And with that, bring in our co-hosts for this evening, Taylor Atkins, Michael Evangelista, and Steve Brown. Right off the bat, Taylor, I have to thank you because you allowed me to be able to go to my daughter's ballet performance this week because you shared the Division III National Championship with my dad, got him the tickets and enjoyed Cortland Red Dragons winning the D3 National Championship. Just shout out to my dad. I know he's listening. That was a big moment for him. He said it was just a smidge lower in importance to the Islanders winning their 4th Stanley Cup, so that rose to a pretty big night out in Salem, Virginia at the Stag Bowl. So Taylor, want to bring you in, want to acknowledge in our news and notes section what kind of week it was for the Montpelier Collective. We put a lot of emphasis this week on social media around the idea of helping to unlock some challenge gifts, the Welcome Bob Chesney Fund, trying to achieve the goal of $150,000 to support our NIL collective. We put the challenge out there to you all with Harry O'Kelly, as well as Jalen Green, to reach $25,000 before the bowl game. We accomplished that in a big way. $25,686 raised from our donor base. That unlocked a $10,000 challenge gift from an anonymous donor. So over $35,000 raised because you, the viewers and the fans of JMU football. Taylor, we talk a lot about the collective and its importance. That's a pretty big milestone for our fan base as we try to reach our ultimate goal of that $150,000.
Yeah, it's amazing to me. I mean, even going back to 2004 when it was a mascot competition, right, for the JMU Duke Dog, just how much the JMU fan base rallies around. They vote, they give, they support. It's pretty impressive. I mean, I'm sure other fan bases and other schools are just as good in some aspects, but man, we are so good at coming together around a cause, and that's why I'm really excited about Coach Chesney being here and what our fan base is going to be able to do in terms of giving him resources. And those resources come in so many different forms, but really just the support, the advocacy, making your presence known in social media, in person. And I think we have a great opportunity to re-engage some alumni and continue to grow the fan base to see what JMU has become.
Awesome. And for fans who have not made a donation yet, MontpelierCollective.com. Again, our ultimate goal is $150,000. So if you hadn't made a gift, please make a gift today if you can, and stay tuned over the days and weeks to come. There's going to be some additional news and content and things around this campaign. Again, this helps student athletes associated with JMU football. It also helps put Coach Chesney and this new staff in the best possible position to help retain talent that is on the roster for JMU football and help this brand as we move into the spring and towards next season. Other news that came out this week, we heard today, information about current interim head coach Damian Robolowski is going to be retained as a part of Bob Chesney's staff, as well as Eddie Whitley. Big news, I think, for the amazing job that they've been doing, helping to steer this program towards the bowl game. We also got news that there were 3 other coaches named this week. Dean Kennedy will be the offensive coordinator under Coach Chesney. Drew Cannon's going to be doing special teams. And Anthony DeMichael, an unnamed on-the-field role. We're still waiting for the official announcements from JMU about those hires. But Michael, your kind of thoughts about the retention of our current coaches that are going to be on the staff and the news of the 3 coaches will be coming down from Holy Cross as Chesney starts to build together what looks like a really strong staff here for JMU football.
Yeah, ecstatic to hear that Robolowski and Whitley are coming back. Not only do the players love them, they want to rally around them, but they have strong recruiting ties within the area. You know, Whitley played at Virginia Tech. He knows Virginia, North Carolina, Mid-Atlantic well, same as Robolowski. And also he coaches our O-line, right? So talk about stability, like the foundation of your team, particularly on offense, right? Like he's a stable force for the program. And really excited about some of the new assistants from Holy Cross. Dean Kennedy, if you do a quick Google search, AFCA 35 under 35, explosive offense, kind of very quarterback option-esque last year with Matthew Sluka, but they've been very variable, or they've definitely tailored the offense based on who's there and the personnel, but really excited to see what he can do over here at JMU. And then also the new special team coach, I think Drew Cannon, like if you look at Holy Cross, every year that Chesney and Cannon have been there together, they've been number one on special teams in terms of block kicks, kick returns, etc. That goes all throughout their entire career. If you look at D2, D3, special teams has been a big emphasis for them in their coaching philosophy. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. And DeMichael, I think he was a recruiting coordinator at Holy Cross. And really important to note, they recruit nationally. In my conversation with Coach Chesney earlier this week, they have more Southern players than JMU, right? So looking at places where they have already relationships and ties and being able to recruit from different patches all over the country, really excited to see the impact these coaches are able to make.
Awesome. And Steve, just to bring you into the discussion, this is a big week for JMU football, our first ever bowl game, and this will serve as a nice segue into our first guest. But just kind of your feelings going into a game against the Service Academy on ABC. Lots of news around this program at the moment, but an opportunity for, with all the noise that's been going on around the hiring search, we get to focus on a football game this week with all the transfer portal news and stuff, to have an opponent and to do it on the national stage against an opponent that we all know and all respect so much in terms of the Air Force Academy. Your thoughts just on the week ahead?
The guys are dialed in. They've had 2 really good weeks of practice. They're getting ready to head down to Texas, and they'll have practice down there. Really looking forward to them playing the Air Force. Love the whole thing with the Air Force Academy. I did a survival school at the Air Force Academy out there when I was in high school, and almost went to the Air Force Academy. So that's back in the day, guys, when everybody had to play a sport. And I think they probably had 130 guys on the football team because everybody had to play. So it was, I'm really looking forward to it. My son-in-law just got out of the Air Force. So he will be, I think, rooting against JMU. So he will not be allowed to be anywhere near anybody in our household if that's what he's going to do. And he probably won't be able to eat. We will not allow him to eat dinner that night either. So, but it's I'm looking forward to it. The guys are looking forward to it. I've talked to a couple of the players. They're extremely excited. They're extremely focused. They have had a very good spirited practice with Coach Robo and the team and the coaches that are there, and they're extremely happy with Coach Chesney, to a person that I've talked to. And you've heard some of the guys that have said things, on social media or said things, but at the end of the day, they're very happy with the way that this has kind of happened and the way that they've been blending and working together. And I love to hear that. You can hear it in their voices, and they are completely dialed in and focused solely on the Air Force Academy. And I know the Air Force Academy is focused solely on them, and Coach will tell us here in a minute.
Awesome. That's a perfect segue. And one thing we've done on this platform since we started is to give voice to the JMU football alumni who are out in various roles in their community, whether they're in the coaching field or doing great things in business. But we have the opportunity tonight with this matchup against Air Force to highlight a hot young coach in the United States who's doing some great things in the coaching scene. Marc Bacote, who is a former wide receiver for James Madison. And Coach Bacote, thanks for taking a few minutes out of your time to join us in this discussion. For those who are not familiar with your background, we want to give you an opportunity right off the bat to maybe shine light on your JMU playing career. Give people who are watching this podcast tonight a little bit of insight into your JMU story and background as what it was like to play for the Dukes.
Thanks for having me on, first of all. I came to JMU in the fall of '97 in that class, recruited by Coach Alex Wood. He was there for my first 2 years, and then Coach Mickey Matthews came our junior year in 1999. And subsequently, we ended up winning the conference that year. And then it was the A-10 back then. So we won the A-10 in '99, went to the playoffs, eventually lost to Troy State, who is now Troy University. I finished playing in 2000, was my senior year, my senior season. Unfortunately, I didn't take advantage of my opportunities there and didn't finish school at first. I went off and played arena ball for a couple years. Then I got an opportunity to come back, and I came back fall of '07 and finished in '08. But in that spring of '08, I went and kind of volunteered with the football team, helping out coaching. That's kind of what got me into coaching.
Awesome. And yeah, Taylor, you go.
No, well, one, thank you for coming on tonight. I know I was a little late getting to the pre-production meeting where we all got to introduce ourselves, but really appreciate you coming on tonight. Give us a little bit of background into, I know Air Force has gone to this bowl in the past and has been successful. Air Force was a very hot team early this year. I would say among the G5 programs, they were probably the most talked about G5 program early in the season. And just give JMU fans a little bit of insight into, geographically, Air Force being so far away. Give them some insight into what to expect from Air Force that maybe JMU fans wouldn't know, having not watched a lot of games, and also the opportunity to play your former alma mater.
Yeah. As far as what we kind of bring to the table, you got guys that are really hard nosed and kind of play whistle to whistle. That's, and play for each other, right? That's the biggest thing I think that I guess separates us from other people, is how hard the young men play and how much they play for each other, and just kind of chop away no matter what the situation of the game may be. As far as playing against my alma mater, this happens to be the 5th time I've played against JMU. 2 times when I was a coach at Old Dominion in both 2011 and 2012, and then again 2 times when I was an assistant coach at University of Richmond, 2017 and 2018. Right now I'm 2-2, so this is going to be interesting. But for me, I'm always where my feet are. At the end of the day, it's kind of like going against your brother, because JMU is family for me. So it's like competing against my brother. But even when you're competing against your brother, you still want to win. So you always bet on yourself. The interesting about it is we found out that we were playing JMU, and I was actually with Delvin Joyce, Curtis Keaton, and Derek Pack. We were all kind of sitting around together, and I got the text in our group chat saying that we got JMU on the schedule. So that was pretty cool.
Oh, that's awesome. Shout out to Delvin Joyce. We've caught up with him at a couple of games this year. I know he's watched us, given us a lot of encouragement and support. So I'm sure he's either watching now or will listen to this later on this week. But really appreciate all the kind words from him over the season.
Yeah, I was going to say shout out to Delvin, because I think he's the one that drew us together, Mark. So once again, appreciate you hopping on. I'm glad you said it first. I was going to say I noticed that you were on the staff at ODU in 2011, 2012, and those 2 crucial games that let's say impacted JMU Nation for an entire decade until we got a revenge last year and this year. Talk to us a little bit, like, you graduated from JMU during the Alex Wood or during the Mickey Matthews era. You see James Madison win a national championship. You see us win another one, go up to FBS, go to Sun Belt, go 19-4 in the first FBS seasons. What does that look like for you? Like, how does that feel being an alum, and like, where do you think sky's the limit for JMU?
Oh, I think it's been awesome, man. It's been awesome to sit back and watch as an alumni, as a football player. I've rooted for JMU in every game other than the ones I played against them. So, it's just been, you're proud to see where the program has gone. You think about, where you guys were as a program when you were there, and kind of the steps that they've taken, and just excited about what's to come. And yeah, I do think the sky's the limit. I think from a location, facilities, brand of football, all that, I don't think there's anything that, into the future that they couldn't do if they wanted to.
Yeah, Coach, if you could speak to the part about, you talked about the hard-nosed part about Air Force, and I think what a lot of our folks don't understand, maybe they do, but I doubt it, is the whole issue of how you do play for each other when you're at a service academy. That everything surrounding their training is for each other. And if you could just speak to that, because it's different than when the football team at JMU or ODU or Alabama say, we're playing for each other, it's a brotherhood. If you could just speak to there's a difference at Air Force than there is if you could just speak to that, I think it'd be helpful for our fans to really understand it.
Yeah, I think the difference lies in that just the whole school, the culture around the whole school is about that, and not just an athletic team. You know what I mean? When you're looking at it, there's only about 4,000 students on campus at a time, and everybody is on the same goal, right? You may have different disciplines that you go to that people are looking to do, but you're there to train to become an officer in the United States Air Force, to be in a leadership position in the Air Force, you know what I mean, in the military. So the goal is about service to others throughout the whole academy, and not just per se on your team. So that just bleeds into what you're doing on your team.
And then how does that tie back to your experience at JMU? I mean, when you were connected with Delvin and the others on the team. I know it's a little bit different, but we always think the bond is stronger at JMU than it is at other places. I'm not saying that it's stronger than it is at Air Force, but we definitely believe it's stronger than ODU and Richmond. I can tell you that. So can you just can you speak to that for how it was with you and Delvin and Curtis and those guys?
Oh, I mean, the guys I play with, our bond is extremely strong, man. A bunch of us still keep in contact and talk and laugh and have a good time. There's nothing like being a part of those teams for me. The times both, on the field that you're doing things with guys and then in the locker room. I know a lot of times people go, what are some things you miss about playing? And just the interactions and the things that go through in the locker room, the funny things that happen, the different things that you'll still talk about 20 years later about what happened and what somebody said, or, things like that are things that kind of bond you together. You spend so much time together. Those guys become like your brothers.
Coach Bacote, I early in my career, I spent some time at the Pentagon, did a lot of work with the Air Force actually, and had an opportunity to go out to the Air Force Academy and spend a couple of days there. And one thing that came through in that is just the immense sense of pride that community has for the Air Force, as well as the alumni have for that institution. I just want to, in this world of NIL and the crazy changes to college athletics, what's it like from your perspective to recruit for an academy like the Air Force and the pride that comes from representing and all the history and the the mystique and that comes along with representing a brand that is as historic and powerful as Air Force?
Yeah, I think we have our own little niche in this world of NLI. I'm sorry, NIL. I always get those kind of mixed up. NIL, because the young men that you're recruiting is more than just a football decision. And I know everywhere says that and everything, but a lot of times when you're going to other universities, you're thinking about the athletic or the sport you're playing first. Well, here, the people you're recruiting, you're understanding that this thing kind of starts when they get done. You know what I mean? And so it's about what their service is going to be. They're understanding that they're going to serve their country and, the job field and the career that they're going to have outside of football. I think makes that a lot different here. And as far as you talk about the pride that they have of what they're going to do to be able to serve their country, having that understanding at 17 or 18 years old, that's a special young man that you get a chance to deal with most of the time.
Awesome. Well, we think this is a really cool opportunity, talking about the brotherhood, to bring on another member of that JMU fraternity in Mike Battle, as a transition to bringing him on as a guest. Mike, I think you have a question for Coach Bacote to try to kind of tie in your two playing careers. I think it's an interesting element to always have a former player ask a former player a question.
Well, yeah, Mark, I really appreciate you spending time with us today. It's interesting because you talked about that connection, that brotherhood that existed with those same kids who played both for Mickey as well as for Alex, and how this has transcended for you. I think that's very cool, and I'm glad you shared that with us. My question was based on your experience at the Armed Forces Bowl. Talk about that a little bit. What is that bowl? We're novices. We're coming at this for the first time. Talk about the bowl a little bit. What is interesting and fun about it?
I just think, part of this, the whole week, the different things you get to do during the week, the different get-togethers and like the meet and greets. And I know we played like a little Family Feud deal last year against each other, and that was kind of fun. I had some of the players up on each side kind of doing that. So that gets interesting and fun. And just, being able to represent, obviously being a service academy, represent in an Armed Forces Bowl, like, a service bowl is kind of cool. But to just play in the postseason, I know this is JMU's first time in the postseason as a FBS team, getting that experience and seeing all that. I think that's something that's really cool. And then you're playing for something, that trophy goes in your trophy case at the end of the day. So you get a chance to play for something too.
That's outstanding. Thank you.
Awesome. Bring me on. All right. Well, Coach, we'll let you go because we know you got to get a flight prepared ready for tomorrow with your team. Just on behalf of everybody who is associated with JMU Sound Off, we'll wish you guys all the best this week and all the best in the game. Thank you for what you do to advocate on behalf of these future officers for the Air Force. And please thank everyone associated with your team, both for their current service and their future service, because I think that's what makes our first bowl game special, is it's against a program that we can all cheer for in the Air Force Academy. So all the best to you, and all the best to you in your college coaching career as it moves forward as well, and hope to continue to see you down the road.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it very much. And you guys continue to do great things.
Awesome. Thanks, Coach. And with that, we'll keep it right here with our second guest for tonight's episode, Mike Battle. We're all familiar with you, but as always, our first question to any guest is associated with JMU's. Give us a little bit about your JMU story to those who may not be familiar with your story as a player, and then what you've done for this university and what you continue to do to advocate for the advancement of the athletic department.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it. And this has been an unbelievable experience for me. It has had a significant impact on my life in everything that I've done. I started out as a linebacker and tight end at Little Matoka High School. There are a few Matoka guys who went to JMU, and was fortunate enough to get an opportunity to participate in Virginia High School League All-Star Game. Had a variety of different offers from schools to go, and interestingly enough, I got a call from the head coach at North Carolina who was interested in me. He called our head coach and said, "Hey, listen, would Mike be interested in coming to UNC? And has Mike signed with Virginia Tech?" And he said, "No, Mike hadn't signed with Tech, and yeah, I think he would be interested." I played in the All-Star Game and never heard another word back from UNC. I committed to JMU, well, to Madison College as it was moving up. And I committed strictly because the president at Madison or JMU called me directly to recruit me. When I went off to the All-Star Game, I found out why UNC did not call me back. They needed me as a linebacker, and they were waiting for another guy to commit. And he was the guy who ended up playing defensive end on the defense that I played in the All-Star Game. A guy by the name of Lawrence Taylor. And they figured out they didn't really need me once they got LT locked down. So I came to Madison strictly because this college president recruited me. He had an interesting approach to it. He said, "Listen, if you come here and help me move this program forward, I'm going to take care of you." I said, "Oh, okay, that's great. I hear that a lot." I did come. I went through undergraduate at JMU. I then proceeded to go into graduate school there, and I got a call right before I graduated from grad school, and it was from Ron Carrier, the president of JMU. He called me up and said, "Mike, do you have a blue suit, white shirt, and a red tie?" I said, "Yes, sir." "Do you have do you have anything that talks about your background?" "Yes, sir." I showed up at his office, and out he walked, and right behind him was a senior vice president at IBM. And from that day forward, I spent the next 10 years with IBM because Ron Carrier made a commitment to me and followed through. And that has been my experience with JMU in everything that I've been involved in. So far, I've had the opportunity to participate in the College of Business. I've served on the Board of Visitors for 8 years, 2 terms. I've had the chance to participate as a Board of Visitors running the athletic committee, where I was involved in hiring Everett Withers, Mike Houston, and Kurt Signetti. So I've had a great opportunity to do what Ron Carrier did for me, and that's give back and engage the university. So I've had a great opportunity as a result of my commitment to JMU.
So did Dr. Carrier yell at you like he did me when he was talking to me about an interview, and he said, "Make sure you shine your damn shoes, Steve." So, but
yeah,
he was. I mean, see that story. I mean, I think what the other thing that will be helpful, and I'll ask you about this, is you've been giving back for years for what Dr. Carrier did for you, and speak a little bit to the brotherhood with the players and former players. You're one of the OGs with the Alpha Dogs, but really let's just talk about what it is between the players and how the former players help them and the network that you guys have put together to really help those guys once it's time to hang those cleats up, because there will be a time and then you have to do something else. So just talk a little bit about the networking that you guys do and how you help those players.
Yeah, I tell you, Steve, it is extraordinarily meaningful and impactful for all of us. We've had the pleasure of being able to represent the university, wear the uniform, sweat and bleed, just like every kid every student athlete who's followed us. And we have maintained a connection to all of these student athletes in what we call our brotherhood. Whenever somebody needs something, they call. They call, and as you call it, an OG, they call somebody who played the year before, and they get the call answered. We have been able to build this connection because of this shared experience, and it is invaluable. I'm working with young men that play 20 years after I did and talking about careers and helping them along their journey. And I'm not the only one. It's everybody who has played, who's put on that uniform at JMU. It's very unique. It's that connection of the brotherhood that I think makes this university different and very special. And it's because you've made that commitment to being a part of something bigger than yourself. I keep trying, I tell the guys that I mentor, and they call me up to talk about jobs, careers, family life, a variety of things. And this happens to a variety of us. I talk to them about just how this experience is invaluable. You do not need to be an experiential learner because you have the value of the wisdom of this brotherhood. These guys that have been through this, have suffered like you have, and who've come out the other end. You need to take advantage of that experience. And so I've been sharing that with a lot of young men who've gone through this program. I hope that people understand we spend time together when we have highs and when we have lows. And many of us have been together for over 40 years. So this is something that's truly unique, and I'm very passionate about it. And I hope that all the younger guys get it. It's more than material. It is real, and it's something that's a lifelong journey.
Can you tell folks, I mean, you and I know, but what Coach McMillan was like? Because to me, and I met him numerous times. I mean, he used to run me off the field when we were playing softball, but he was very nice. But I did whatever he said. He reminds me of Bob Chesney in a lot of different ways. And if you can just kind of speak to it, to me, we've come full circle in a lot of ways. He wasn't as new age as Bob is, but he was also older. But if you can just speak to that, because to me, what I heard him say, and I was at a lot of practices even when I was in school, he has that whole piece of, I'm making you into the well-rounded man. It's not just a football player. I'm here for you for life. And I remember you guys talking about that. I talked to him every week at every game. I made a point to talk to him at every game. I formed a relationship with him 40 years ago after the UVA game, and we had it until the day he died. And I think if you can just kind of talk about that, because it's an important piece that links people. I know we've got NIL money and we've got, let's go do this, let's go do that. But from my standpoint, if you can just give a little insight into Coach McMillan and how that whole piece shaped you.
Yeah, it's interesting, Steve. Coach Mack was all about making better men. I mean, this is an era where we didn't have all of this sort of transactional relationships with NIL money and all of those kind of things. Really, it was much more focused on how do we build the best young men possible so that they make a contribution once they leave this institution. And Coach McMillan, and I've seen a lot of this in the way that Coach Chesney has presented himself. It's more about creating a relationship with you as a person, not you as a commodity, as a tool. A lot of what's going on with college athletics right now and all of this NIL and the money flowing, hey, if I were 20 years old, I'd look at that too. But I've got the benefit of experience having worked with folks like Coach McMillan to understand that there's something much more powerful and more important than that, something that you want to leave with your children and their children, something that's more tangible than the hundreds of thousands of dollars that people will earn and spend in their lifetime. It's more about how we can help you be the best man possible. And Coach Mack taught some really hard lessons. I remember when he asked me if I would transition over from linebacker to tight end in spring ball, give it a try. And I did. I was starting linebacker, and then he asked me to play tight end. I went over there. I did great. Frankly, I did pretty good in spring ball. And he said, "You're my starting tight end going into the fall. What do you think about that?" And I said, "I'd rather hit than be hit." And he said, "Well, Mike, you can come back as my tight end and I'll pay for school, or you can come back as a linebacker and you can pay for school." This is a man who never spoke ill, never truly raised his voice, went straight gangster on me right there. And he was teaching me a lesson. And that lesson is, you aren't going to get everything that you want, but you need to do what we need from you. And that that has helped me as a business leader. It's helped me as a father. It's helped me to become something that I ordinarily wouldn't have that opportunity if I hadn't had the pleasure of playing, the privilege, frankly, of playing for Chalice McMillan.
Mike, I think we need to clip that entire talk that you just gave and send it to every recruit looking to come to JMU, and even the guys on the team now. And as I mentioned to Coach Bacote, I missed the pre-show meeting, so I didn't get a chance to say hello, but it's good to see you again.
Good to see you too.
We met many years ago when I was working in the Duke Club, and have always enjoyed the chance to catch up with you when I've come to campus. But my question is going to transition a little away from the microcosm of JMU football. And you added so much context in your introduction, how you've served in so many leadership positions at JMU, but you've also worked in the private sector, but you've also been a student athlete. And so you have such a unique and rare perspective, which is why not only is that why JMU is putting you in so many of these leadership positions within the school, but that I'm thankful that someone that can bring in decades of what it means to be at JMU into these searches. And so I kind of want to look forward as we're looking to replace, to some degree, the unreplaceable. I mean, I think that highly of Jeff Bourne, but talk about a little some of the conversations that are maybe being had in terms of summarizing what is the pitch when you're trying to sell JMU as a university, as an athletic program, and what's kind of the 10,000 foot view of what this next athletic director is going to need to really understand about really everything you just talked about as it relates to football.
As I look at this progression from what I think is arguably one of the best athletic directors in the country, and that's Jeff Bourne. As I look at what we're trying to, how we're trying to replace that role, we've got to continue to do what, go back to Ron Carrier. Ron Carrier, when we played West Virginia at FedEx Field, I sat in a box, and I was my first year on the board of visitors. And Ron grabbed me and he said, "Mike, there are two things you got to understand. Number one, I'm the president emeritus, and the president emeritus needs a raise. And number two is, if this program is not moving forward, then it's dying. You have to focus on moving this to the next level." Now, we did that. We moved this to FBS, and now we are looking at what's next. And I think that the next athletic director has to build on top of what Jeff has done. Jeff and the administration, the Charlie Kings, the John Algers, those folks have done an amazing job and made some very tough decisions. Now we need to build on top of that. I personally would walk into a discussion with somebody who's looking for this job and say, Power Five, how do we get there? How do we keep moving forward? We can't be satisfied with where we are. We have to continue to move. And the legacy of the people who commit themselves to support that is going to be substantial. This team this year and these guys who stick around, they're going to be legends in this institution. I want an athletic director who is focused on, how do I create a platform for a legendary outcome for this for this institution across not only football, but all of our sports. We're doing great things across the board, made some great investments, and we need leadership that is always forward focused. And that's what I'm looking for, what I hope we can find as a new athletic director to build on Jeff's legacy.
I love that. I think we need to take that tagline, "We can't be satisfied," and put it on like a t-shirt going forward, because I totally believe in that. Mike, once again, thank you for joining us today. I know you and I have had a number of interactions and conversations over the years. And I love hearing about your story this evening because it provides a lot of color and context on like the culture of success, the culture of excellence and winning that we all know today. And we definitely love sharing on social media and sharing about the history of JMU. Looking to the future, what do you believe that Coach Chesney brings to the table that will help propel JMU forward?
I think what I have understood about Coach Chesney, his brand, let's call it that. His brand is relationship based, building the best program possible and building it with a connection to the souls that are involved in getting there. That's important. It's not just a financial transaction. It is about the connection to these young men. These parents send these kids or allow these kids to sign and come to school here, not just simply because all of them, everybody wants to play in the league, but the reality is you've got to be able to build a solid foundation as a young man to become a professional, a father, all of those roles that are ahead of them. And I think Coach Chesney can bring all of that out in this program, as well as a lot of excitement in terms of our next step in evolution of our of the way we attack the Sun Belt Conference. So I'm excited to see that. Props to Coach Signetti and what he was able to do here. Now it's the next thing, and it's got to be better. So that's what I'm excited about in terms of Bob Chesney's impact on this program. Uh-oh.
Sorry, the producer's helping with my daughter at the moment. What I was going to say is that when we started this program, again, a big purpose and goal of it was to not only to try to drive this athletic department, drive awareness of it, drive brand understanding, but was to also have these types of conversations to get into the human side of JMU. I just want to say on a personal note, thanks for continuing to tell the stories of Chalice McMillan. I had the pleasure of taking some coaching classes with Coach McMillan, and just as good of a coach as he was 10 times better of a human being. And the more we can tell his story and share the impact that he had on this program, it just it always makes me smile, because I will never forget the classes and the lessons I learned, and hearing that he impacted so many other people during his time at JMU. It's just special. And I know he's looking down on all of this and probably is enjoying this conversation maybe more than anyone possible in the JMU world. So, and again, thank you from everybody as a JMU fan, and I'm from this podcast, and just what you continue to do to advance this athletic department in the future, and for bringing it back to family, because I think that's an important thing that we need to continue to bring up in this era of NIL and transfer portal movement, is that there really is something special here at JMU. And that's kind of the perfect segue into our next guest, who's going to talk about how Bob Chesney really values family as a part of his approach in the coaching game, which I think separates him from maybe some of the other candidates who are in the landscape. So thanks again, Mike, for taking some time out to join us, and we look forward to future conversations. Awesome. Go Dukes. And with that, we are going to bring on our next guest, who is a unique perspective as somebody who, we've heard a lot about Coach Chesney. We've seen interviews, we've seen media, but very few people have had the opportunity to share their story of what it's like to play for Coach Chesney. And that's why we wanted to have on our next guest, who is in the broadcasting and sports media world, covering South Carolina athletics at the moment, but somebody in an earlier time in his life, strapped on the pads. Mike Uva, thanks for taking time out of your Sunday night from bantering back and forth with South Carolina fans, which sounds like is a 24/7 exercise for you. So, Mike, one thing, I know why I was really excited to bring you on is there's been a ton of coverage, and when you see these types of coaching changes, there's usually another side to the hire, where you see a cascade of fans who will, put a laundry list of things out there about the coach that they don't like, or, there's bitterness when a coach makes a decision to come from JMU. Well, one thing I've seen in every one of our social threads and comments things about the hire on Sound Off is we've had Holy Cross fans reaching out to us, sending us messages telling us, you hit a home run. This guy's special. He's unique. We've seen other former players saying the same thing. We've seen administrators. I just personally, and I'm not, just putting this from the perspective of purple colored lenses, I've never seen anything like it. So give us a little insight into your time with Coach Chesney as a player at Ascension. And what do you think is driving just this positive outpouring of support for a man who's, no longer at Holy Cross and no longer at Assumption, but it really seems to be carrying with him a fan base that's going to be watching and rooting for him to succeed at JMU.
Well, first off, I appreciate you guys having me on. I think back to when Coach Chesney came in my senior year at Assumption. I was receiving messages from some of my high school buddies who played for him at the Division III level at Salve Regina, and they said, you're going to love this guy. Because you're going through a coaching change, especially when you're going into your senior year, you don't know who the heck this guy is, especially playing at that level, right? You're not able to read the clippings as much in comparison to when they climb up to a level like JMU. So I say that because we had really no idea about this guy other than what some players that from high school or teammates or whatever were telling us about him. It was evident quickly that this guy was going to skyrocket in college football simply because he is the most prepared man I've ever been around. And I've been very fortunate to cover some very talented coaches and detailed-oriented coaches. I've been able to go behind the scenes and see a lot of it. Chesney is incredible. The way that he prepares, the way that when he comes into a program, and you saw it in some of the videos that came out when he first met with the team, he makes it clear that it's not his team. I mean, that same exact speech, I remember when he came to Assumption and said it to us. And we're just thinking, all right, he's just saying this to us. Like, no, he really wants it to be a player-led program. And I think more than anything, especially now in the era that we're living in with the transfer portal, NIL, that is so freaking important. That is so important to be able to have. And again, it's some of these things that we hear, we talk about, but it's another thing to actually do it. And I think, too, when you're talking about the importance of where we are with college football, player retention, right? That's something that gets so overlooked. We talk about the transfer portal. We talk about high school recruiting, player retention, being able to have a player-led coach, a guy that believes and wants you guys to be able to run the program the way you want it to be, and not being a used car salesman in the recruiting process. I think that is going to help JMU out tremendously because you have a guy like Bob Chesney.
Well, Mike, thank you for coming on tonight. And I echo everything that John said, because when I saw the reports coming out about Coach Chesney, and you're kind of drinking from a fire hose at that point, learning all that you can about him, his past programs, it really was almost I don't want to use the word too good to be true, because that makes it sound like there's something fake or insincere. What it was there was so much positive, and it was the positives that you want to see in a football coach, and that things that were being reported on that aren't usually what's being reported on when it comes to a head coach. It's usually about the wins and losses, who have they put in the NFL, like all the bells and whistles. But this was the players' coach. They had that article, I believe it was at Assumption, if you correct me if I'm wrong, where they took the two captains when he first got there, and he said, hey, after this drill, get into a fight. Actually, before I get to my question, I do actually want to address that. You were a senior on that team, it sounds like, correct?
That was actually one of the stories I shared with one of the local newspaper guys about that. So
can you, before I ask the question I want to, can you dive into that story a little bit?
Yeah, so to provide a little bit more context to it. So what Chesney would do, and this, they do stuff like this in the NFL, but it was just very unique in terms of just being able to get his message across. During preseason camp, during fall camp, the night before, he was always going to try to have a message that he wanted to be able to instill to his players. And the message was that night was that we were just awful in terms of some of the penalties, right? Just like dumb penalties. So he showed us where we ranked in the conference, where that would put us in terms of FBS. Obviously, we're at the D2 level, but FBS, and where that would rank, just amongst everybody. And we were towards the bottom. And the bottom line is don't shoot yourself in the foot. And if you look at Chesney teams, they've been very disciplined. Now, obviously, there's always going to be outliers, but that's one thing, too, that I would tell JMU fans is that you have a guy that comes in there, again, detailed-oriented, you're not going to have the self-inflicted penalties, the stuff that drives you friggin' nuts when you're going on a nice drive. Like they try to limit that, but they practice it. And I know that sounds silly, but we come out the next day. It was the first day of full pads. We're doing Oklahoma drills, and he staged a fight. None of us knew other than the two captains, because he talked about the night before. How are you guys going to react? How are you going to react to it? And I kid you not, I remember maybe a year or two prior, we had Oklahoma drills, and I am not making this up. One of my buddies, he got into it with a player, and the helmet came flying off, and our teammate threw it over into the softball field. So I don't think that would have went well with Chesney if that happened then. But the point being is, he was, and then he'd stop the practice. Like, this is what we talked about last night. I wanted to see how you guys were going to respond. Right. So again, some people, and they might think that's cheesy, but there is something to be said about every little detail. I mean, shoot, not to get too sidetracked, but even against Boston College last year with Holy Cross, there was a huge weather delay, and they didn't go out there for like another hour. I know this sounds dumb. Someone could bring this up with Chesney. They actually practice stuff like that, where they will actually just stop practice completely, and they're just stuck in a locker room in a small area, visitor's locker room, and then they have to be able to come out, 30, 45 minutes later and just respond. Like, this is stuff that some people they overlook. And again, that's not to say no team in the country is doing stuff like that. I mean, I'm a son of a high school football coach for 40 years. I'm not naive. He pumps in music for practice. Everyone friggin' does that. But I'm just saying is, he's really thinking about the little things that a lot of other coaches overlook, or they'll say, oh yeah, we'll pay attention to, but they really don't focus on it the same way that he does.
Well, that story is just incredible because, it's when they're reporting on how detail-oriented and X's and O's he is, when you actually put stories behind those reports to actually describe what they mean, I think that's so important. So that's neat to hear. But I was having a conversation earlier today. So in this era, this new era that everyone's trying to go through and everyone's trying to figure out, of NILs and transfer portals, and teams are having such a heavy turnover, it's almost as if the head coach and the coaching staff becomes even more valuable and important, because that is one of the consistents that's kind of continue to be there year over year. And so as we have a lot of chatter across social media, people are, they're wanting to know, what are we doing with the transfers? What are we doing with recruits? What are we doing with the current players? I'm not asking you to put words in Coach Chesney's mouth, but if you could kind of summarize what you kind of think some of those one-on-one conversations are being had, whether it's with a recruit, whether it's with someone in the transfer portal, or with someone either on the team thinking about transferring, or just someone on the team that says, look, I'm not looking to transfer, but I just want to know what my role is going to be on this team. So how is Coach Chesney having those one-on-one conversations, and how is he approaching it?
I don't know how he's getting any sleep. That's the first thing I think of, because you think about everything that you have to do as a guy that was just named head coach last week, right? You have the official introductory press conference last Tuesday. So I say that because now you have to assemble a coaching staff. You have to figure out which coaches you're going to be able to bring back, which guys aren't going to be back. You got to figure out players who's staying, who's leaving, who's entering the portal, who can you try to bring back. Then you also got to be able to put together a recruiting class for early National Signing Day, which is coming up on Wednesday. Never mind the fact that the program's getting ready to play in their first bowl game in program history. So you have all these things going on. And for Chesney, I know one thing is he's constantly watching the film on what's gone on. And I'm sure he did that throughout the recruiting, throughout the job interview process, knowing him. So he already has an idea of which players can do what in the system that he wants to implement. So I think being able to be prepared helps him be able to speed up that process just a little bit, and being able to have extra time, because again, there's really no extra time right now when you have early National Signing Day on Wednesday. I think it's going to allow him to just go into those meetings and have a better idea about what these players are all about, having conversations with some of the coaches that are currently on staff to have an idea. All right, guys that are, on their way out potentially, who do you think we should make sure that we don't lose here? So I can only imagine how difficult that is, but knowing Chesney, he is someone that is not the type of person that's just going to say, all right, I'm going to do it my way. He'll constantly reach out. And I'm sure 1000% he has been talking nonstop to the coaches on that current staff right now, picking their brains to be able to get some advice. He's not the type of guy that's just going to go in there and say, all right, it's going to be my way or the highway. Like, he's going to look at it and he wants to be able to figure out, especially at a program that has had success, especially this past year, but historically, he's going to go in there and want to figure out What do we need to make sure that we don't lose, to make sure that we continue to head in the right direction, the direction that this fan base truly wants this program to head in?
No doubt. And Mike, this is so awesome. Like, we have to remind JMU Nation, we hired, Coach Chesney in 6 days, and it felt like an eternity, right, to get him in the seat. And now he's been in seat for a week. So many things happening, going all at once, like you had mentioned. So your insight is tremendous. Going on the field, right? When we think about the brand of James Madison from FCS and even FBS now in the Sun Belt, it's a program that wins on the line of scrimmage. This last year, our second year in the Sun Belt, we set a record with 45 sacks. We had the leading sack leader in the country. Or talking about our ability to convert on 4th and 1 and wear down opponents up front. Talk to the fans about, like, what is Coach Chesney's philosophy going down to X's and O's, and what he's looking for in a defensive lineman, what's he's looking for in a wide receiver. He had an All-American quarterback in Sluka last year, but talk a little bit about, like, what he believes in and what does he believe that good looks like on the field.
Well, I mean, he brought in the 4-2-5 my senior year. And I mean, pretty much every team in the country is running a 4-2-5 now, just because of the evolution of the tight end position and how you need to be able to have someone that obviously has the size to be able to match up with a guy like that, but you also need to have someone that has the speed. So, but he's very multiple in terms of what he'll do defensively. He'll mix it up. Sometimes they'll have a 3-man front. Sometimes they'll have a 4-3 out there. So what he does is he takes advantage of the talents, the skill sets of the guys on the roster. Again, he's always been a 4-2-5 guy, but at the same time too, going back to what I was mentioning before, he's not going to have too much pride to say, all right, hey, we have to always do it this way. If they have the bodies, especially right now in a time period where you're going into a program that the majority of your players for next year won't be guys that you recruited. I've always made this analogy. When Shane Beamer arrived at South Carolina, you can't go into the kitchen and want to cook a steak if you only have, some Fruit Loops and, some milk. You got to be able to make what you got, right? You got to be able to work with what you got. So I think what you'll see with Chesney over time is you'll start to see them evolve into what he truly wants them to be. But I think you'll start to see the type of players that JMU's been able to recruit the last couple of years. You're going to start to see Chesney mold to their strengths. And I think that certainly helped, again, in a time period where JMU has been playing incredible football over the last couple of years. And you look at, obviously, what Chesney has done historically. He's gone to programs where they weren't good, and he had to turn them around. And it took maybe about 2-3 years to really get things going. Now he's at a place that has all the pieces that he needs to be able to be successful. Never mind the resources. I mean, my goodness, it was my first time at JMU last week, and I was very impressed. So I say that because talent-wise, he's the type of guy that finds the player. I mean, again, he's going to be able to bring in some dogs, but he's really good with finding that player that no one's looking at. I mentioned Deontay Hardy. He brought him into Assumption. No one was looking at Deontay Hardy. Oh, he was too undersized. Well, Deontay Hardy also set the record at Assumption, and not just Assumption, but while at Assumption, for the all-division record for most kickoff and punt return touchdowns. I think he has 14. Still a college football record to this day. He also was able to bring in Cole Tracy. Cole Tracy set the record for the most field goals made. He ended up transferring to LSU his senior year, his grand senior year. So I bring these things up because he just has this knack. The long snapper for Assumption, he ended up going to play with the Buccaneers and won a Super Bowl with the Buccaneers. He's still with them, Zach Trenner. So I bring these things up because he just has the ability to bring out the most out of players. And then obviously at Holy Cross, what he was able to do there was incredible. And obviously I have a deeper connection to being at Assumption. But last year I was working for CBS. I was doing 2 jobs. It was a part-time situation. And I went up and I was working for CBS, covering the Patriots, Red Sox, Bruins, all that. But I also had a chance to cover Holy Cross during their undefeated season. And just the way the players react to him, very similar to what I saw at Assumption. So a lot of the things I'm saying right now, because I'm sure some people are going to be like, well, he hasn't played for the guy in about a decade or what. Things change. I understand that. But again, seeing the way these guys were reacting to Chesney, I felt like I just went in a time machine and went back. Just because, again, the way that he was able to get the players to rally around him.
100%. I'm like geeking out a little bit and getting excited. For those that are listening to Sound Off, my passion's on recruiting. And I love talking about recruiting. I've been covering it for a long time. JMU, we've had a history of taking preferred walk-ons, FCS preferred walk-ons that are now, first team, second team, all Sun Belt. So I love the idea of finding diamonds in the rough, finding folks that no one else was looking at and molding them into all-time record-breaking players, which seems like is what Chesney has been able to do. I've been able to watch some tape, right? I watched the Boston College game. I've watched a little bit of like the South Dakota State game as well. These Chesney teams, they play like their heads on fire, right? They might not have the biggest and fastest, particularly on defense, but everyone's running to the ball 100%. In particular, when I was looking up Coach Chesney's background, the first year, I feel, when he got into a program that does not have a history of winning, they led in some special teams category, whether it's block kicks, block punts, kick returns, you name it. Talk a little bit about, you mentioned Shane Beamer. Talk a little bit about his philosophy and like how he puts an emphasis on special teams and how that helps him win moving forward.
He cares deeply about special teams. I don't know the two specialists for JMU the other day, but we were walking out after his press conference and he's heading on over to get his headshot on the opposite side of the stadium. And we're walking across the field. That's where we took that photo. And he saw a football on the ground. And I knew instantly what he was going to do. He was going to go punt it. And he punted it back to those guys. And Chesney has a nice freaking punt. And the kicker was just looking at him like, okay, coach. Like, he had in dress shoes too and everything. So I say that because he enjoys it. He's always been, being around Beamer, he reminds me a lot of just the way that he approaches special teams. We would spend a lot of time on special teams in practice. And I'm not trying to scare people and say, oh, man, they're not going to focus on offense or defense, because as soon as you say that, there's always that one or two wise guy that will say that. But the point being is it's not just, okay, yeah, we're going to care about special teams. No, they care about it. And the reason why they care about it is because it's helped them win tremendously wherever they've gone. I mentioned Deontay Hardy and the records they were able to set at Assumption. You look at what they were able to do in terms of the number of block kicks at Holy Cross. And a lot of that, too, give credit to Drew Cannon. They truly care about what they do from a special team standpoint. And, I'm very fortunate. I was able to block a kick for Chesney my senior year. And a lot of it, again, going back to just being detailed oriented and the things that he teaches you to look for that you might not be paying close attention to. So I think there is something truly to be said about a coach that cares about special teams in an era where it feels like more coaches are like, well, special teams are starting to slowly go away, right? We could fear catch a ball, at the 10-yard line, it'll come out to the 25. It's like, no. He still puts a lot of emphasis on it because it's truly made a difference. Again, I mentioned Cole Tracy, a great example. And Cole has been an awesome person to talk about Chesney since he left, because he went and played for LSU the year right before they won the national championship. And as Cole has said multiple times, he's like, I went to LSU. Yeah, I was nervous. I didn't know. But then I also took a step back after. I'm like, man, Chesney practices were even more intense. Like the way that Chesney prepares you. And that's coming from a kicker. And I know some people can be like, oh, it's a kick. But again, he is just so detailed oriented, and it goes through everything, going also back to the fact that he treats special teams being an important third of the game.
So, I appreciate you doing this, because this gives everybody a good insight into who we have. And it's the most excited I've been in a long time. And no disrespect to the other coaches we've had whatsoever. But he's different. I think I can feel it. I can see it. And so I've got a couple questions for you. I guess the first one is, what has Coach Chesney done for you since football? How's he stayed in your life? How's he helped shape what you've been doing after football? Because to me, that's almost as important as it is what he's doing for you when you're playing for him.
One of my favorite stories to share about Coach Chesney, and it goes back to what we were talking about with special teams. I always knew I wanted to get into broadcasting once I got into college. I was very fortunate, been doing TV for about 8-10 years now at this point. But going back to that point, it was 2013. I had an opportunity to go interview one of the catchers for the Red Sox. His name was Jared Saltamamakia. And this was during the World Series. It was like in between like games, I don't know, 1 and 2 or whatever. So he heard about that. We were just like in passing. I told him like earlier in the day. And I said, yeah, I had an opportunity to go interview him later tonight, like at a sporting goods store, but he's like, hey, Mike, we got practice tonight. And he's like, well, what time is it? And I told him. I didn't know this until we got out there. He flipped practice completely because at that point, I was getting banged up a lot. I had so many injuries. I always had to work my way up through the depth chart. So special teams was really my thing. He put special teams, the first 3 periods, it was special teams. It was something, I think it was Indy period and then special teams right after. And then he's like, all right, go get your butt to Boston. So I share that because you hear coaches say things of like, oh yeah, I'm always going to be for my guys, anything I can do to help them. That's one thing. When I went through things in my personal life, some lows, I mean, he's always the first person that will pick up. So I'm very grateful for him. There's a reason why when I went back for a wedding 2 months ago, there's a reason why one of our teammates invited Chesney's wife to come because Bob couldn't go, because people just truly like this man. He does so much for his players. He truly cares, and he wants to help you after you leave. You hear so much about that. And again, I think people really need to appreciate having a coach like that in this era more than ever, is because, and as I talked with him, I said, player retention is going to be so crucial for a school like JMU. Very talented program, mid-major, NIL. Even a school like South Carolina doesn't have the same type of NIL in comparisons to some of the schools out there, the Texases of the world or whatever. So you need to be able to do everything you can as a coach to really sell a player on your program each and every year. As dumb as that might sound to some fans, and I get it because I'm right there with you, this is the new world of college football we live in. And to have a guy that's like that and can really sell it and isn't some used car salesman, I mean, yeah, a couple guys will enter the portal every year. So be it. That's college football. It's going to happen everywhere across college football. But to be able to retain the majority of your roster, you need a guy that can really just not just sell it, but he can back it up in everything he does. And he's the perfect man for an era like this.
I mean, to me, his nickname should be Glue, because I think he's going to be the glue that keeps these guys together. And it looks like that's what he did at Assumption, and that's what he's done at Holy Cross. Let me ask you a fun question. What gets under his skin? He seems like the nicest guy, but I know when I see the nicest guys like this that are this hardworking and this sticky, well, I call him sticky because he wants to keep people together. There's something that really pisses him off or gets under his skin. What is that?
I mean, we joke with him, and I'm, being in the TV business and I have the hair. I mean, I'm new to the beard game right now. This is temporary. So if you have any advice for a beard rookie, let me know. But, we'd always bust his chops because he looks so young. I mean, he's in his mid 40s, but he would bust his chops about having the nice haircut and everything, call him, like a little pretty boy and everything like that. So I think, just busting his chops, I think stuff like that. Trying to be careful here. I don't want to get myself in trouble with Coach Chesney. I mean, he'll find a way to come down to South Carolina and beat me. No, but I think, I think stuff like that, in terms of just, just having fun with the guys. And it goes back, right? It goes back to being able to still relate to your players. Again, being in his mid 40s, he's constantly staying updated on music and whatever the case may be. I think it was Pliles. I can't even pronounce the freaking guy's name. It was a rapper that came out when he got the job to JMU, and everyone's like, how the heck does he know about Bob Chesney? Because again, he puts the effort in the little things that might not seem like it's important because he knows it's important to his players. So I definitely butcher that name. Someone's listening saying this guy's a moron, but that's all right. But the point being is he does those little things too. So, oh boy, I don't know if I should really push this one out. He was on, I'm going to get a phone call. He was on a reality cowboy show early on in his early 20s, called Cowboy U. And we found that when he came in, because again, you don't have any information and it's Division II. So there's no people aren't going to be having TV shows. And literally, as I said that, I got a text message from one of my teammates who's watching saying he's going to kill you. Yeah, so he was on a show to be a cowboy. I don't know. Yeah, so I don't know if that's one of the stories he likes talking about. So that might be another thing that can get under his skin.
I'm going to call him John Travolta.
I was about to say, I think you just gave the JMU marketing department some great work and great content to use this week. So at the very least, having some fun with Coach Thanks for that. Breaking news here on Sound Up. But Mike, we'll let you go because we know we've gone over a little bit more time than we expected tonight. But I think you're just a testament to everything we've heard in this process. The fact that it's been a number of years now since you played for Coach Chesney, but you're still willing to speak so passionately about the impact that he had on you and the impact he's had on so many of your fellow teammates. And I just have a feeling that this is going to be a special time for JMU. And what I love about all the conversations, again, that we've heard about Coach Chesney is how genuine it is about the people side of things. And in an era of college football where a lot of us, me included this week, I've kind of struggled with some aspects of this changing world that we're all navigating through with the, the roster turnover and stuff like that. Hearing that we're getting a coach that cares so much about what happens after their time at JMU, I think is just going to build upon that foundation we talked about earlier in the episode. Thanks for giving us a few minutes of your time this week. And we'll let you get back to dealing with the South Carolina fans, who I'm sure have plenty of comments about what's going on in their neighborhood and backyard this week as well.
One more
Please,
thing.
Hey, you can host the show, Mike. I was just being respectful for you.
Oh no, I got nothing to do. I got my commitment video of this kid commits in a little bit, so we're good to go. From covering South Carolina, and I know JMU has high expectations, and rightfully so, right? You're a team that's in the top 25. You want to continue to climb. You want to be one of the first teams to be in the college football playoff when it expands to 12. Don't get it misconstrued with what I'm saying in terms of, oh, he's a nice guy, he's this and that. He will find ways to push players' buttons in practice to make it more difficult in practice than when it comes to a game, things are easy. And he understands at the end of the day, he's being judged on wins and losses. So it's not just, okay, he's a nice guy. He's going to go in there and, Love's going to be able to solve all the problems. No, he wants to go out there and he understands he has to win in order to keep his job, especially at a place like that. So he's going in there. I know people are, a little concerned right now with what's going on with the with National Signing Day. I can tell you right now, JMU is not in a boat by themselves. We're dealing with that. You go through a coaching change, it happens. It's happening throughout college football. Welcome to college football, right? I mean, it's just where it is with early National Signing Day. So he's going to do whatever he can, just like a lot of these other coaches out there are going to do whatever they can to keep that class intact, especially from, Signetti and what they were able to do, because I know it was a very high recruiting class. But what I would say is the future is so bright. And I'm not saying like next year it's like, okay, you should just forget about it. Whatever happens, I understand the expectations are high, and that's the reason he went there. But, things are going to start to become much easier. Just right now, like we were talking before on the show, coaching staff, players leaving, bowl game coming up, trying to put everything together. You try to prioritize. Yeah, there's going to be some things that you're going to lose out on, unfortunately. That's just part of it when you are a new coach somewhere. So I think everything's going to be okay. But again, with the process speeding up as quickly as it is and getting closer and closer to Wednesday, I get it. But again, yes, nice guy. Don't get it misconstrued. He's also someone that is an absolute killer. He's going to go out there. He's going to want to win because he knows that's what he has to do in order to stay at a place like JMU.
Well, and with that, since you told me you have more time and you just addressed the number
I got nothing to do.
The number one comment and question that has come into us this week is there has been some questions about, well, we're hearing all this great stuff, but we're seeing, both players going into the portal, and there's a whole nother conversation about why that occurs. And in every player is entitled to make their own decision. There's their own rationale and thought process behind what they do it. But the same also with recruits. There's many different dynamics about why a recruit chooses to go to one school, or the relationship they had with an assistant who recruited them that might be at another school now at Indiana, per se. How do you think he approaches recruiting? And not just him. How does he approach it with also the delegation to his staff and these coaches who are going to be coming to JMU? Any familiarity with their approach and why JMU fans should be patient with this process, knowing what you've seen in the past about his ability to recruit to previous destinations?
Well, especially on the Northeast side. And that was something that I know the athletic director at JMU mentioned as to one of the reasons why he wanted to bring in Bob Chesney, is because he's very, very familiar when it comes to the Northeast. Now, having said that, there's going to be people out there that will be like, well, he was coaching D2, he was coaching FCS. Yes, but a lot of the same things that people were saying about him when he went to Holy Cross from Division II, he was able to prove them wrong. 6 years there, won 5 straight Patriot League titles. That had never been done before. Made Holy Cross freaking relevant in football. I mean, Holy Cross, the last time they were really relevant, like in a big time sport, was basketball. And you have to go back to like my grandfather's days when he was younger. So I bring that up because he's always proven that. He's always proven it. There's no question in my mind that he's going to be able to come into a school like JMU. He's going to be able to find players that have that same mindset, that want to be there. And I think that's something too that will be important. He'll find guys that will obviously be very talented, but I feel like he's also going to attract players that will truly want to be there. Because again, player retention from year to year, as silly as it sounds, that's part of this new norm of college football. So you need to be able to do everything you can when you're recruiting. And I know him, knowing him, I'm sure when he was at Holy Cross towards the end, he identified players, even guys that if he felt like he was still going to be at Holy Cross, he identified players that could play at that next level, or guys are, you know what, this might be a reach to be able to bring him here because he's probably more of an FBS player. He's more of a Group 5 guy. So I'm sure he already has some players that are identified. I would not be shocked. Over the next week or so to see some players come out of the portal and commit to JMU that are going to get Duke fans happy. So I think, again, there's just so many moving pieces. This isn't just something that JMU is going through. I saw it a couple of years ago when Shane Beamer came in. Early National Signing Day just throws in an extra wrench into things. And I talk about this with numerous college coaches throughout the country, not just at the FBS level, but at the FCS level. It's hectic. It's crazy. But it's not just limited to what JMU is going through. This is happening at other schools. And it's just, you're trying everything you can, though, especially at a program like JMU, to keep that momentum going forward. So I think that's the toughest challenge for him, is to be able to do everything that he has to, put a coaching staff together, roster retention, whatever, XYZ, but being able to make sure that he's doing this in a manner which is going to continue to keep the train going forward. And he knows that. He's well aware of that.
Yeah. So I guess maybe my final question then is there's obviously a focus on high school recruiting because of what is in front of us with the signing day, but now the portal, something that he obviously had access to at Holy Cross, but now being able to recruit out of the portal to a program like JMU that's coming off of a historic year in terms of national brand recognition, the national television dates, the appearance that we're going to have on ABC this week against Air Force, obviously College Game Day. So much has happened in the last couple of months, forgetting that occurred, Pat McAfee show and everything. How do you feel his brand and the brand that he brings in terms of being somebody who really cares about players, and also the reputation that he has probably among the player community, because let's be honest, all these players talk, is going to help JMU fare in the portal in the weeks to come as he looks to field a roster that will likely have some significant holes in it after the transition from some of these players now that Coach Cignetti has left JMU?
Well, I'll say this, and it obviously varies from college to college. I'm going to start with college and I'll work back to high school. When some of these players enter the transfer portal, you hear coaches say, "Oh, we'll do whatever we can to be able to help this player, that player when they leave, get them in a good situation if they need our help and they want to go elsewhere." Obviously, not every player does that. However, there are some players that will do that. It is insane, and I even told Chesney this: the number of coaches, whether the coaches I've met during my journey, going back to my days in Mississippi to now in South Carolina, the number of coaches who have reached out that have wanted to get in contact with Chesney is insane. And I'm talking some pretty big name programs too, because they have paid attention to what's going on with him. So I say that because he is very, 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 very well respected in the coaching community, not just at the Division II, Division III, FCS level. We're talking Division I as well. I try to keep a lot of my conversations private with coaches. I know Shane Beamer, and I'm sure he'd be okay with me sharing this. We were talking the other day, and he was saying, I'm really impressed with what he's been able to do. I'm very impressed with what he's been able to do. And this is a guy that recruited one of Chesney's players out of the transfer portal a couple of years ago from Assumption, from a Division II school. He ended up starting like the last 6-7 games at nickel, and he ended up signing with the Steelers the year after. So I say those things because people are paying attention. I think that can also help Chesney, that if they're looking at a school or a coach and a player does have that relationship and they're like, "Hey, you know what? I can help you out. I think this would be a great school for you." Chesney would be one of those coaches. I'm sure a lot of these other coaches would be pointing in the direction of saying, "Hey, if you need anything, I will call Chesney for you." So I think he's going to be able to get some players from that, not just this year, but in the future. And then trickling down to the high school ranks. Again, going back to the fact that he's been mainly recruiting in the Northeast region and just the whole East Coast, I should say. He really has a lot of relationships with a lot of high school coaches. He grew up in Pennsylvania. His dad was a longtime high school football coach. He has a lot of roots that trickle down past Connecticut, past New England, and start heading down towards Virginia. And he's done a great job, too, with recruiting even all the way down to Florida. You know, he had a quarterback from the Tampa area that started a couple games for him when Sluka was down. So I bring those things up because I think he's just going to continue to add to the fact of building on some of those relationships. And again, like I said, they're authentic, right? I can tell you, even going back from my recruiting days, you can read, a lot of these coaches, a lot of them come across as used car salesmen. He's not, because again, he knows that just getting you on campus, especially now, isn't going to be enough. You need to make sure that they don't freaking leave year after year. So I think he's going to be doing whatever he can to make sure that he's bringing in the caliber players that this fan base wants and, quite frankly, deserves with the success they've been able to have the last couple of years.
Well, and thanks to your Cowboy story, we also know that he doesn't take himself too serious, is willing to maybe, and I say this in a serious note, if there was a flaw with our last coaching staff, that maybe not the most media savvy head coach, not somebody who really sought out the camera, maybe until the end with what he did with Pat McAfee's show. But it does seem like Bob Chesney, somebody who is going to be very marketable for JMU, somebody who's going to be willing to do the little things necessary to help to raise the funds to support the NIL collective. And that's a big part of coaching now. Is that fan engagement and that relationship building, which is going to be critical to the recruiting piece, the retention piece, but also the fundraising piece, which is becoming so ingrained in every aspect of college football at this time.
Jonathan, it's massive. I talked with Coach Chesney about this just the other day, and I said, look, you're going to have more media than you dealt with at Holy Cross and Assumption, and it's going to continue to work its way up. No one's saying it's like, being at an SEC school, but there's going to be more cameras there, certainly. And the more wins, guess what happens? That little station that's maybe an hour away, they're going to drive. And then you're going to have a radio station, whatever the case may be. There'll be more people there. I know you guys had the call-in show, or that was at a restaurant. I don't know if that's a weekly thing during the regular season or not. Or is that so?
Yeah, that's a weekly.
So I think being able, and I told him this, I said, just continue to be yourself, because with NIL, I said, this is just my opinion on it. Just seeing how it has been working with South Carolina and other schools. People want to feel like they know you, right? Now, certainly the easiest way to get more money from an NIL standpoint is just win, right? But they feel like they know you more when you go out there and you're in the community and you're just yourself. And that's what he is. Now, obviously, he doesn't have all the time in the world to be able to shake everyone's hand and kiss every baby, but because he's got to put all these things in place, like we were talking about, that he's running out of time, it feels like, in a sense, before early National Signing Day. But he's someone that understands what to say in front of the camera. But again, it's all authentic. If anyone saw his introductory press conference, that's Bob. He'll make some jokes occasionally, but that's just him. He's a regular guy. He's the type of guy. I know it's cliche to say, but he truly is. I've gone out, I've had drinks with him. He's the type of guy you'd want to grab a beer with. It's as simple as that.
Well, Mike, seriously, first of all, just from one person who dabbles in broadcasting from time to time to another, you're really good at what you do. So I'm glad you've gotten into this field and are continuing to lend your talents to the sports broadcasting world. But seriously, just your knowledge of him, your experience with him, your ability to really kind of tie into one of the pillars of this platform is we try not to speculate on here. We try, when we launch this, we want to really have educated discussions and bring on people who have actual knowledge of the subject matters we're talking about. You brought that today, and I think you really connected a lot of dots for fans. Hopefully you're watching this, and just know you're always welcome. You put a word into Coach Chesney. We'd love to have him on when he slows down. So if he doesn't get too mad at you about the cowboy hat story, just let him know there's always a platform here to tell us.
I'm waiting for that to get back to him. But we'll definitely, I'll definitely pass that along.
Yeah,
I'll definitely pass that along. I'm sure, if he'll give the thumbs up to Drew Cannon too. Drew would be a good one too.
Anybody's welcome. But thanks again, Mike, and we look forward to watching you, your continued growth in your career, and just know you're always welcome back here if there's any more stories you or any of your other teammates from the past might have about Coach Chesney.
I appreciate it. I'll let you know if I'm back up that way. Beautiful campus. Would love to have you. If I don't have to. Awesome.
Thanks
love
again,
it,
Mike. Appreciate
Take care,
it,
guys.
All right, and with that, guys, wow. I don't know. We were all, I don't even know. We were all pretty fired up before this episode, but just to, again, and to bring this to our final thoughts, look, I'm going to be candid and transparent. This has been a tough week for me in as a JMU fan. The exhaustion around the portal and everything that comes with, the sentimental and emotional value that we all assign as fans and people who host a weekly show to some of these players. And just to be direct, all the best to any of there players who are choosing to maybe go in a different direction. At least on this platform, we support them, and we wish them the best, and we'll continue to be fans of them going forward. But to hear from a former player who, we all have our questions. We're all impressed with the initial press conference, but you still want to know what he's like, what he's going to be, doing in terms of bringing this brand into the future. To hear somebody as many years as it's been since he played for Coach Chesney, this passionate and this detailed about what he's seen from him in the past and what he continues to hear from former players, is pretty damn exciting and bodes well for the future, because a lot of the clips that are going to be, used from this episode are going to be the types of questions parents are going to be asking, maybe in the recruitment next week, saying, what's it going to be like for my son to play for Coach Chesney? Well, we just heard about as powerful testimonials you're going to ever find from a former player advocating for his coach. Just Taylor, your thoughts on anything that was brought up tonight and just what I thought was a pretty special episode.
I'm going to let Michael and Steve kind of give their thoughts on the football thing, because I want to use my time to really highlight what is another very special team and a very special season going on right now, and that's men's basketball. They only had one game since our last episode. It was at Hampton yesterday. Lost the first half. They were down 42-41 at halftime to statistically one of the worst teams in the country. They ended up, I believe, winning by 17. They covered the spread. One thing that's going to be tough about this team and any team in our situation is we're not the last couple of weeks and really moving on to the next few weeks ahead of us. The quality of competition is not going to be the highest. And I'm sure all of us have played competitively, whether it be high school or rec league or intramurals or something. But, there is something to be said about when you go into a game knowing how heavily favored you are. It can sometimes be even tougher to bring your A game. So having said that, college basketball is kind of a funny thing, the way it's laid out, where the season starts early November, right at the thick of college football season when a lot of things are being decided. And, you have this out of conference schedule, which by no means is preseason or exhibition. Arguably, these games that they're playing right now is what dictates a lot of their net scores and the conference net score that's going to be factored in when they're positioning this team on the bracket, hopefully for March Madness. But so it's a very important part of the team. But right now, 352 or 362, I forgot that number, total Division I teams in the country. There are only 4 remaining that are undefeated. And, I've seen some chatter from some of our more envious schools, Tech, Liberty, that are, making the comments about, well, they haven't played anybody. I do want to break down those 4 teams. And it is Houston, it is Oklahoma, it is Ole Miss, and JMU. Of those 4, JMU right now has the 3rd highest net. They're 25 in net. Oklahoma's 9, Houston's 1. Ole Miss is down there at 64. The reason Ole Miss is down so far is because they have no quad 1 wins. And after after Michigan State defeated a very good and undefeated and top 10 Baylor team this weekend by almost over 20 points, I believe. That put JMU's win against Michigan State back in that quad 1 territory, another quad 2 win against Kent State. So this 10-0 by no means has come by easily. And that is a very, I believe, objective way of measuring how this team has been. And so we have an undefeated team playing at JMU Tuesday night against Coppin State. Students aren't going to be in school. It's a tough game to get to because of the holidays and everything. But, this is a team that really, I understand why maybe people's attention maybe hasn't rallied around or come around to this team yet. Come January, we're going to be in conference. The school's going to be back in session. That student section is going to be incredible. We got a lot of football in front of us. We got the bowl game coming up next weekend. It's hard not to be excited for the future of JMU football after hearing this episode with Coach Chesney. But this JMU basketball team is doing something really special. I know we did have a comment come in about the women's basketball team having to come from behind win against Maine. That's a very good Maine team too. And I mentioned last week just how good this women's basketball team is. Some of the losses that they've incurred early in the season, 2 of them have been against teams that are likely going to be in the tournament, and I believe they still are VCU's only loss. So we have 2 very good basketball programs playing at the Atlantic Union Bank Center. I'll give JMU fans a pass for another week or 2 to get through bowl season, but it's time to turn your focus onto JMU basketball come January. This is going to be a memorable year. It's going to be a historic year. We've already achieved some things that not only have never been done in JMU history, but many teams around the country, even at the P5 level, have never done. So kudos to this basketball team. Kudos to the entire basketball staff. We look forward to bringing you more coverage of JMU basketball. And with that, I will graciously turn it over to Michael.
And well, real quick, because you mentioned JMU women's basketball player, the transfer portal taketh, it also giveth to JMU. And Hevion Bristow now eligible to play, played today and contributed nicely for JMU women's basketball. The Ohio State Providence transfer, who's potential to make a huge impact on that team as they go through Sun Belt play. So, obviously get excited about the men's team undefeated, but keep an eye on the women's team doing some good things as well. Michael, I know you were pretty pumped about that conversation. Your thoughts on any aspect of today and just what we heard about Coach Chesney?
Yeah, pumped, I think, is an understatement. I think number one, how do we get Mike on the show like every week, right? I think we find a way to do that, get him on the show, hyping the program, selling JMU. I mean, I'm all about it. I don't want to speak for everyone, right? I don't want to speak for the fan base. I don't want to speak for you 3, but I think myself included, I think we all needed to hear that, right? And I think we all needed to hear that message from Mike, because it's really hard, and we want to give Coach Chesney the benefit of the doubt, but it's also really hard to fight off emotions, right? We're only 3 or 4 weeks away from game day and being undefeated and going to a bowl game and all this stuff. And when you see people going into the portal or decommitting, when you don't know the full context, it's really easy to get caught up in emotions. And I really appreciated Mike's insight into everything that a head coach, particularly Coach Chesney, has to go through during this time. Not even hitting on the personal side, right? Like moving his family,
3 young kids,
3 young kids that are going through school, right? So many things are happening. But on the field perspective, I love what we've heard about Coach helping people off the field and like making them the best citizen possible. And you heard that from every level that he's coached at. But I love knowing that he's able to bring out an edge in his players, because someone that's able to motivate players is so clutch. We saw it a lot at UNH with Sean McDonald. He never had the biggest, fastest, or strongest players, but they always played with their hair on fire. And I feel like that is the foundation for Coach Chesney's teams, because next year, whether we like it or not, whether other programs admit it, JMU is always going to be the game circled week over week. We are going to be the other team's Super Bowl. We are the team that every fan base, every player, personnel, support staff, you name it, they want to knock off cocky, arrogant James Madison University. And it helped me understand sort of Chesney has that edge and be able to provide that on and off the field and really help motivate our players. That was really awesome. Lastly, it's great to hear he's a type of coach, and it sounds like they've substantiated as well. Like, he's constantly evaluating. I had the pleasure of meeting Coach Chesney for a considerable amount of time last, I think, Wednesday or Thursday during the meet and greet. He's constantly evaluating the personnel. And I think Mike touched on that. He probably, when he knew he was going to get the job, he's probably evaluating some of his targets, whether it's in the portal, his former program, from the high school ranks. Can they play at FBS? Can they play at JMU? And I imagine post bowl game, when we'll know for sure who's in and who's out, who's going to be on the roster, how many scholarships does he have to play with, he's going to be ready to fulfill the need, get the players in here. I don't know if we talked about it, but we offered a Texas offensive lineman earlier this evening.
Top 10 center in the country, correct?
Top 10 center in the country, formerly committed to Tulane. As we all know, Willie Fritz just took over the Houston job, so they're experiencing the same things we are. But when's the last time we got a player from Texas? And, having some of his ties, whether it's his recruiting, his assistant coaches that came in, like, these are some of the new areas where, like, Holy Cross recruits nationally, we can start tapping into. So really needed to hear that. I think a lot of JMU Nation needed to hear that. I think we've got a lot to clip and share and post for recruits and ourselves tonight. So that was awesome. And, that was probably our best episode yet. I'll say it up front.
Phenomenal. And again, really great that you brought up the recruiting thing, because we've urged some of us individually more than others on Twitter, patience, trust the process. I think tonight hopefully made some people a little bit more willing to, let's give this guy a couple of weeks and then evaluate where we stand. But I think we're going to be in good hands. Steve, I want to thank you before you give your final thoughts for bringing on Mike Battle tonight, because man, love hearing his perspective as a former player, and just you can see how passionate he is about the history of this program, how passionate he is about the brotherhood. Just a really special conversation with him, and just excited for his continued efforts to make this athletic program what it's going to be in the future, and just really enjoyed that conversation. But your final thoughts?
I mean, it all fit together, and I share with what you guys have. I have less angst than probably folks in the younger part of the fan base, but I get some of it. I hear you. I mean, you'd love to have more information, and I guess is what in this day and age, we're not really willing to sit back and let things play out. We want it now. We want to know what's happening now. We wanted Chesney hired in 24 hours. What the hell was happening? How come the guys couldn't get him hired in 24 hours? How come it couldn't have been
Why did
announced?
Cliff Wood not have any sense of urgency?
How is Cliff Wood in that private jet stopping off in all these places and buying bourbon? How in the world are they not paying attention?
Why is he flying up to Boston just to get good pizza? Come on, Cliff.
Yeah, I mean, Jesus Christ, what were you guys doing? It's things take. There's a process, and I can tell you, and I can just tell you from what we're hearing, from everybody we heard tonight, but mainly from the guy that played for him. He told you who he is. He's a detailed-oriented machine. And you heard last week, if you listened to Cliff, they had dossier. He had a dossier on everybody he was talking to. He knew what Cliff had done all the way back, I think, to high school jobs. And so if you've got somebody doing that to interview for the job at JMU, do you think maybe he's got a list of people he wants to fill different roles on the team? Do you think maybe he's got plan A, plan B on who's going to fit which role? Do you think he's got a board in the office talking about who's going to be where and who he's going to go after? I would think so. That's usually what happens. So I'm not worried. Yes. Do I not like, I hate to see people decommit, but people do things for reasons. Do I hate to see people transfer out? Sure. You want to think that you're immune to that. And over the years, JMU pretty much has been. We lost Antoine Wells, wished him well. Isaac Ukwu went off to Ole Miss, great for him. This year, we've got a lot of people that are in the portal. Wish nothing but the best for those guys. Hope they could all stay. They probably won't. And that's okay. That's the era we're in right now. And that's okay. There's not going to be any vitriol coming from me about that, because I know that we're going to put some other guys here. Look at last year. Look at the roster we had last year. You'd never heard of Jordan McLeod. You'd never heard of Elijah Surratt. You hadn't heard from a lot of these people.
Tyshawn Lawton.
Yeah. I mean, look at all this. Look at all the people that you had kind of come up and become JMU people. We'll do the same thing this year. So, be patient. This was great for me. This was cathartic for me. I got excited during it. I got a little teary, choked up a little bit talking about Coach Mack with Mike. But that's two old people talking. So when you see the 80s you see Mike 81, 83 and me 84. Yeah, we're going to talk about old stuff, but it does come back. History does repeat. And a lot of these folks never knew Coach Mack. Just didn't. And he's a lot like Coach Chesney, and this is why it's exciting. But I'll be remiss not to say, and I got to give something out, to the Air Force. We're coming. You think we're disorganized and you think we don't have our act together? When's the last time? Do you remember the last time that anybody cared about an Air Force game? I don't. But you know what? Come Saturday, I do. You show up at 3:30. Off you go into the wild blue yonder. That's where you're going, because we are going to put a smackdown and a beatdown on you. Full respect. Love what you do for the country. Don't care for 60 solid minutes. 60 solid minutes, we're going to mop the field with you. You get ready for it. Bring your wings, baby, because we're going to clip them. Here we go.
Steve, I love you. You're a national treasure.
Had to do it.
Bring the wings. Love it. All right. Housekeeping. Couple things. For starters, we are going to have a special episode this Wednesday evening, signing day, We're going to recap all the recruiting news because, spoiler alert, there will be recruiting news because, as we heard, he knows he needs to do that. So Wednesday evening, time, guys, we thinking 8 o'clock, same time. Let's just decide that now. 8 o'clock. Yeah. Let's live TV. So Wednesday night, 8 p.m. We'll do another broadcast focused on recruiting. We'll recap the class, look at some of the names, and do our best to give you some real-time analysis of what's coming then. And then for those of you who cannot make the trip to Texas, Michael and I will be making the trip down. There is going to be a viewing party in Richmond at Gus's. Home team, not Gus's, home team grill with Taylor Atkins going to be doing kind of a live watch party for the game. So if you're in Richmond come hang out with the Alumni Association, come hang out with Taylor, watch the game together. You could be on Sound Off. You could be a co-host. Taylor's looking for some co-hosts for this episode.
We're looking for
a
lot of co-hosts.
Young broadcaster who wants to get some experience, join Taylor for about 4 hours worth of conversation. While Michael and I try to make our flight with about 20 other JMU grads after that game. So Taylor, thanks for doing that. And as always, thank you to the fans who continue to watch this program. Thanks for putting up with us on social media. We're not always perfect. I wasn't perfect this week, but we appreciate it. We're all getting through this transition together, and another exciting new era for JMU. So I hope you enjoyed the broadcast. And with that, go Dukes, beat Air Force. Safe travels to everybody making the trip down to Texas. And for those who are there, Michael and I will see you. Look forward to saying hi, and go Dukes, beat Air Force.